You know that moment, when you realize you've been pushed too far? When something inside you just snaps. I'm standing in my kitchen right now, looking at an empty trash can. And I can't stop smiling. Because 3 hours ago, this trash can was filled with my stepmother's precious, vintage jewelry collection. The one she spent 15 years bragging about. The one worth, according to her, over $30,000. But let me back up. My name is Sarah, and I just committed what my family is calling the crime of the century. But here's the thing. I don't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. You see, 20 minutes before I dumped every single piece of her jewelry into that donation bin, she threw away my dinner. Again. For the third time this week. And not just any dinner, the dinner I spent 2 hours making after working a 12-hour shift at the hospital. I watched her, through the kitchen window, scraping my homemade lasagna directly into the garbage disposal. Plate and all. She was smiling, actually smiling, as she did it. Like she was enjoying every second. And that's when I heard it. That little voice in my head that said, "Sarah, it's time." The same voice that had been whispering to me, 4 months, telling me to fight back. To stop being the family doormat. To stop letting this woman, who married my father for his money, treat me like I was nothing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. You need to know about the years of emotional torture, the constant humiliation, and the moment I discovered her dirty little secret. Because what I did today wasn't just about thrown away food. It was about justice. Sweet, calculated, perfect justice. And the best part? She has absolutely no idea that I know the truth about her. About where that jewelry really came from. About the lies she's been telling my father, and our entire family, for over a decade. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, because this story is going to take a while. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail. Let me paint you a picture of what my life has been like for the past 15 years. My father, David, is what you'd call successful. He owns 3 car dealerships, a small real estate company, and enough investments to retire comfortably tomorrow if he wanted to. We're not billionaires, but we're definitely comfortable. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. And for 3 years, it was just me and Dad. Those were honestly some of the best years of my life. We had pizza for breakfast, stayed up late watching movies, and he never once made me feel like a burden. Then, Linda came along. She was 35, Dad was 48. She had this whole sob story about being a struggling single mother, working 3 jobs to support herself. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, and this way of making my father feel like a hero. They dated for 8 months before she moved in. And that's when everything changed. The first incident happened 2 weeks after she moved in. I was 15, and I had made myself a sandwich for lunch. Turkey, cheese, lettuce, nothing fancy. I left it on the counter for maybe 5 minutes, while I went to grab my backpack. When I came back, it was gone. The plate was in the sink, completely empty. "Oh," Linda said, not even looking up from her magazine. "I thought that was for me." "You should have labeled it." "Labeled it? In my own house?" But I didn't say anything. I just made another sandwich. The second incident was worse. I had saved up money from my part-time job, for 3 months, to buy this dress for homecoming. It was nothing expensive, maybe $60, but it was perfect. Blue, with these tiny sparkles that caught the light. I came home from school, excited to show Dad, and found Linda wearing it. In our living room. With the tags cut off. "It looked so cute in your closet," she said, spinning around like a teenager. "I hope you don't mind. Your father said I could borrow whatever I wanted." The dress was 2 sizes too small for her. The seams were stretched, the zipper was broken, and there were makeup stains on the collar. It was ruined. When I tried to explain to Dad what happened, Linda started crying. Real tears, real sobs, about how she was just trying to bond with me. How she thought sharing clothes was what mothers and daughters did. Dad bought her the story, completely. He even bought her a replacement dress, in her size, that cost 3 times what mine did. I never got a new homecoming dress. But the worst part, the part that still makes my blood boil, happened during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to nursing school. Full scholarship, based on my grades and volunteer work at the local hospital. I was 17, and this was my dream. My ticket to independence, to a career helping people. The night before I was supposed to confirm my acceptance, Linda sat Dad down for what she called a family meeting. "David," she said, in that sweet voice she used when she wanted something. "I've been thinking about Sarah's college plans." I remember sitting at her dining room table, watching her hands as she spoke. She had this habit of twisting her wedding ring when she was about to lie. "Nursing school is so demanding," she continued. "And Sarah's still just a child. Don't you think she should stay home for a year or 2? Help out around the house? Learn some responsibility?" What she didn't say, but what I knew she meant, was that she wanted me around to do her chores. To clean her messes. To be her personal assistant, while she played house with my father's money. Dad, bless his heart, actually considered it. For 3 days, he went back and forth, asking me questions like, "Are you sure you're ready for this? And maybe Linda has a point about waiting." I fought for that scholarship, tooth and nail. I showed him my acceptance letter, my grades, letters from teachers. I cried. I begged. I promised I'd call every day. In the end, I won. But barely. And Linda never forgave me for it. The day I left for college, she didn't even say goodbye. She just stood in the kitchen window, watching me load my car, with this look of pure hatred on her face. Let me know in the comments where you are watching this video from. I'd love to know. But college was just the beginning of her campaign against me. Every time I came home for holidays, something of mine would be missing. My childhood books, donated to charity. My old jewelry, mysteriously disappeared. Even my bedroom, slowly transformed into what she called her meditation space. By the time I graduated nursing school, 4 years later, it was clear that Linda had won. Dad called it her house now. My pictures were gone from the walls, replaced with her family photos. My favorite meals were never cooked anymore, because Linda had suddenly developed allergies to everything I liked. But I kept quiet. I got my own apartment, started my career, and only visited on major holidays. I thought, if I just stayed out of her way, maybe we could coexist peacefully. I was so incredibly wrong. So fast forward to 3 months ago. Dad calls me, out of the blue, on a Tuesday evening. I'm just getting home from a particularly brutal shift, dealing with COVID patients and understaffed units, when my phone rings. "Sarah, honey," he says, and I can hear Linda in the background, making that annoying humming sound she does when she's pretending to be busy. "We're having a little dinner party this weekend. Linda's book club friends, some neighbors, Maybe 20 people or so. Would you mind helping out? Now, when Dad says helping out, he means cooking, cleaning, serving drinks, being Linda's unpaid catering staff. But he sounded tired. Older than his 63 years. Of course, Dad, I said, even though every fiber of my being was screaming no. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Linda will be so pleased. Linda, pleased? That woman hadn't been pleased with anything I'd done since the Clinton administration. But I showed up that Saturday morning, at 8 a.m. sharp, with my sleeves rolled up and ready to work. The first thing I noticed was the menu Linda had planned. Beef Wellington, lobster bisque, truffle risotto, chocolate soufflé. Basically, a meal that would take a professional chef, with a full staff, about 6 hours to prepare properly. Oh good, you're here, Linda said, not looking up from her phone, where she was scrolling through Instagram. The guests arrive at 6. I assume you can have everything ready by then? 6 hours. To cook for 20 people. A meal that belonged in a 5-star restaurant. While she sat on the couch, liking photos of her friend's vacation to Italy. Linda, I said, as calmly as I could. This menu is pretty ambitious. Maybe we should simplify a few dishes? She looked at me then, with that expression. The one that said I was stupid, incompetent, and completely beneath her notice. Sarah, darling, she said, in that condescending voice. I'm sure you can figure it out. You're the one with the college degree. College degree. Like nursing school, somehow qualified me to be Gordon Ramsay. But I started cooking. Because that's what I always did, when Linda pushed. I bent over backwards. I worked twice as hard. I made it happen. The beef Wellington was perfect. Golden brown, pink in the center, exactly like the YouTube video I'd watched 3 times. The lobster bisque was smooth as silk, rich and flavorful. The risotto, creamy and aromatic. By 5:30, I had created a feast. A legitimate, restaurant-quality meal that would have cost hundreds of dollars at any decent establishment. I was exhausted, covered in flour and butter stains, but proud. Really proud. Linda, I called out. The food is ready. Should I start setting the table? She walked into the kitchen, looked at the spread of dishes, and her face just fell. Oh no, she said, shaking her head dramatically. Sarah, what have you done? What had I done? I had literally moved mountains. I had created magic in her kitchen. The portions are all wrong, she continued, picking up a spoon and poking at the risotto. And this color, it's not what I envisioned at all. She was rewriting history. Right in front of me. This was her menu, her choices, her specifications. And honestly, she added, opening the trash can. I don't think any of this is going to work. That's when she did it. That's when Linda looked me dead in the eye and scraped my perfect beef Wellington into the garbage. The whole thing. 6 hours of work. $60 worth of ingredients. Gone. What are you doing? I whispered, watching her dump the lobster bisque down the drain. Starting over, she said, like this was completely normal. Don't worry. We'll just order pizza. Much more casual. Pizza. She destroyed my entire afternoon, my pride, my effort, for pizza. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was when the guests started arriving, and Linda told them, with this little laugh. Oh, Sarah was supposed to cook tonight, but it didn't quite work out. You know how it is, some people just aren't cut out for entertaining. Some people. Like it was my fault. Like I hadn't just performed a culinary miracle that she threw in the trash. I stood there, in my flour-stained clothes, while 20 people nodded sympathetically, and Linda basked in their attention. "Don't worry," one of her book club friends said, patting Linda on the arm. "We've all been there with family." Family. Like I was some distant relative who'd wandered in off the street. But I smiled. I nodded. I helped serve the pizza when it arrived. I cleaned up afterwards, while Linda and her friends sipped wine and gossiped about people who weren't there. And when everyone left, around 10 p.m., I finally let myself feel angry. "Dad," I said, finding him in his study. "We need to talk." He looked up from his newspaper, with those tired eyes, and I could see he already knew. He'd witnessed the whole thing, but like always, he was going to pretend it hadn't happened. "Sarah, honey. Linda's under a lot of stress lately. The book club, the neighborhood association, it's a lot of responsibility." Responsibility? She threw away 6 hours of my work, because she felt like it. "Dad, this has to stop. The way she treats me, it's not okay." He sighed, set down his paper, and gave me that look. The one that said, "Why can't you just get along? She's my wife, Sarah. And she's trying, she really is. Can't you meet her halfway?" Meet her halfway? I'd been meeting her, 3/4 of the way, for 15 years. That night, driving home to my apartment, I made a decision. I was done. Done cooking for her, done cleaning for her, done pretending that her behavior was normal. But I had no idea that 3 weeks later, she would cross a line that would change everything forever. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying the story, please subscribe. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. 3 weeks after the dinner party disaster, Dad calls me again. But this time, his voice sounds different. Strained. "Sarah. I need you to come over. Tonight. It's important." When I walk into their house, the first thing I notice is the silence. No humming from Linda. No television. Just dead quiet. Dad is sitting at the kitchen table, with papers spread out in front of him. Bank statements, credit card bills, and something that looks like a police report. "Sit down, sweetheart," he says, and his hands are shaking. That's when Linda walks in. But she's not her usual, confident self. She looks panicked. Her perfect hair is messy, her makeup is smudged, and she keeps glancing at the papers on the table. "David," she says, in this high-pitched voice. "Maybe we should discuss this privately first." "No," Dad says, firmly. "Sarah needs to hear this too." He picks up one of the documents, and I can see it's a letter. From a law firm. "Linda," he begins, "has been borrowing money from my accounts. Without telling me. Borrowing. That's a nice way of putting it. It started small," he continues. "A few hundred here and there. But over the past 2 years, it's grown to nearly $40,000. $40,000. I feel my stomach drop. Where did the money go?" I ask, looking directly at Linda. She opens her mouth, then closes it, like a fish gasping for air. "That's what we're trying to figure out," Dad says. "The bank called yesterday. Apparently, someone's been using my credit cards to make purchases I never authorized." Linda starts crying then. Real tears, but not the manipulative kind she usually uses. These are desperate tears. David. I can explain everything. I just need time. Time? Dad's voice is getting louder. Linda, you bought a car. A brand new BMW, and put it in your sister's name. You've been sending money to someone in Florida, monthly payments of $800, for God knows what. I'm watching this unfold, like a train wreck in slow motion. 15 years of Linda's lies, finally catching up with her. And the jewelry, Dad continues, picking up another paper. Tell Sarah about the jewelry. Linda's face goes completely white. What jewelry? I ask, though something in my gut already knows. Dad looks at me, with this expression of pure heartbreak. The vintage collection she's always bragging about, the one worth $30,000, it's not vintage. And it's not worth $30,000. He slides a receipt across the table. It's from a costume jewelry website, dated 6 months ago. She bought it online, for $300. Wholesale costume pieces, made to look antique. $300. For jewelry she's been claiming, was passed down through generations of her family. But that's not the worst part, Dad says, and his voice is barely a whisper now. He hands me another document. This one is a deed. To my grandmother's house. My grandmother, who died 5 years ago, left her house to Dad. It was supposed to be kept in the family. A place for future generations to visit and remember her. Linda convinced me to sign the house over to her, for tax purposes, she said. Told me it would save us money, in the long run. I'm staring at the deed, and I see Linda's signature. But not Dad's. David, you didn't sign this, I say, my voice shaking. No, he says. I didn't. Forgery. She forged his signature, and sold my grandmother's house. The house sold 3 weeks ago, he continues. For $215,000. Money that should have stayed in our family, is now sitting in an account, that only Linda has access to. That's when I lose it. That's when 15 years of suppressed anger, finally explodes. You sold Grandma's house? I'm standing now, my chair knocked backwards. Linda tries to speak, but I cut her off. That house, where I spent every summer as a child, where Grandma taught me to bake cookies, where she told me stories about great-grandpa, you sold it, for what? A BMW? Costume jewelry? Money for some mystery person in Florida? Sarah, please. Linda's voice is small now, defeated. Please what? I'm yelling now, and I don't care. Please forgive you? Please pretend this didn't happen? Please continue to let you treat me, and Dad, like garbage? Dad is just sitting there, looking older than I've ever seen him. There's more, he says quietly. More? How could there possibly be more? He opens his laptop, and shows me a series of text messages. Between Linda, and someone named Marcus. The messages are explicit. Romantic. And they span over 2 years. The money she's been sending to Florida, Dad says. It's for him. For Marcus. She's been supporting him. Paying his rent, his car payments. Even his credit card bills. I read the messages over Dad's shoulder. They're disgusting. Linda, professing her love for this man, promising to leave Dad soon, once she's secured enough money for their future together. Their future. Built on stolen money, from my family. How long have you known? I asked Dad. I found out yesterday, he says. The bank called about the unauthorized charges, and everything just unraveled from there. Linda is still crying, but now she's angry too. You went through my phone, she snaps at Dad. That's a violation of privacy. Privacy? She's talking about privacy, while sitting in a house she helped steal from? Get out, I say, quietly at first. Sarah. Linda starts. Get out. I'm screaming now, and I don't care who hears me. This is my house too, she says, trying to regain some authority. No, Dad says, standing up slowly. It's not. Not anymore. He walks to the kitchen drawer, pulls out a key, and slides it across the table to her. Pack your things, tonight. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings. Linda stares at the key, like she can't believe this is happening. David, you can't be serious. After everything we've built together. Built together? She means, stolen together. You have 1 hour, Dad says. Before I call the police. That's when Linda's mask, finally, completely, falls off. You'll regret this, she hisses, looking between Dad and me. Both of you. I know things about this family that would destroy you. Threats. Even now, even caught red-handed, she's making threats. Try it, I say, stepping closer to her. I dare you. She looks at me then, with pure hatred, and I realize, this is who she's always been. The sweet, struggling single mother, was just an act. This angry, vindictive, thieving woman, this is the real Linda. And that's when I made my decision. About the jewelry. About the perfect, poetic justice I was going to deliver. Linda packed her bags that night, but she didn't go quietly. Oh no. She went through that house, like a tornado, grabbing everything she could carry. Dad's expensive cologne, gone. The good silverware, gone. Even the coffee maker, that we'd had since I was in high school, she took it. But the jewelry, her precious costume jewelry collection, she left it. Sitting right there, on her vanity, like some kind of monument to her lies. I'll be back for the rest, she told Dad, as she loaded her car. Don't touch anything that belongs to me. That was her first mistake. Thinking, after everything she'd done, that she still had rights in that house. The next morning, I drove over to check on Dad. He was sitting in his kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee, looking absolutely devastated. 20 years of my life, he said, when he saw me. 20 years, and I never saw it coming. I made him breakfast, eggs and toast, while he told me about the lawyers he'd contacted. The bank investigations that were starting. The process of trying to recover what Linda had stolen. The house is gone, he said. Grandma's house, there's no way to get it back. The new owners are innocent, they bought it legally. $215,000. My grandmother's legacy, just gone. That's when I noticed it. The jewelry, still sitting on Linda's vanity, catching the morning sunlight like it was actually worth something. Dad, I said. What happens to her stuff? The things she left behind? He shrugged, exhaustedly. I guess, she'll come back for it. Eventually. Eventually. But what if she didn't get the chance? I spent the rest of that day researching. Looking up laws about abandoned property. About what constitutes legal ownership when someone moves out during a domestic dispute. Turns out, in our state, if someone leaves belongings behind for more than 30 days, after being asked to remove them, they're considered abandoned. But I didn't want to wait 30 days. I wanted justice. Now. That evening, while Dad was at his lawyer's office, I went back to the house. I gathered up every single piece of Linda's fake vintage collection, and I put it in a box. The necklaces, the bracelets, the earrings, the rings. All of it. $300 worth of costume jewelry that she'd been using to impress people for months. And then I drove to the Goodwill donation center. You know that feeling, when you're about to do something that you know is exactly right? When every fiber of your being is singing with the righteousness of your actions? That's how I felt, standing in that parking lot, holding Linda's box of lies. The donation worker was a sweet elderly woman named Margaret. "Oh my," she said, when I opened the box. "This is beautiful jewelry. Are you sure you want to donate it?" "Completely sure," I told her. "It needs to go to someone who will actually appreciate it." Margaret gave me a receipt, for tax purposes, valuing the donation at $50. $50. For jewelry Linda claimed was worth $30,000. I drove home, feeling lighter than I had in years. But the real satisfaction came 3 days later. Linda showed up at Dad's house, around noon, with a moving truck. I happened to be there, helping Dad sort through some of the financial documents, when she rang the doorbell. "I'm here for my things," she announced, pushing past Dad, like she owned the place. She went straight to the bedroom, and I followed, just to watch. The look on her face, when she saw the empty vanity, was priceless. "Where is it?" she said, spinning around. "Where's my jewelry collection?" "What jewelry collection?" I asked, innocently. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," she hissed. "My vintage pieces. My grandmother's jewelry." "Where is it?" "Your grandmother's jewelry?" Even now, she was sticking to the lie. "Oh," I said, pulling out my phone. "You mean this jewelry?" I showed her the photo I'd taken. At the Goodwill donation center. Her fake vintage collection, sitting in a bin, with a sign that said, "All jewelry, $2 per piece." Linda's face went through approximately 7 different emotions. Shock, disbelief, rage, panic, and finally, pure, murderous fury. "You had no right," she screamed. "That was worth $30,000. "Really?" I said, pulling out the receipt from the costume jewelry website that Dad had given me. "Because according to this, you paid $300 for it 6 months ago." She stared at the receipt, and for a moment, I thought she might actually, physically attack me. "You can't prove anything," she said, but her voice was shaking now. "Actually," I said, "I can." That's when I pulled out my trump card. The screenshots I'd taken of her text messages with Marcus. The ones where she bragged about fooling everyone with that fake vintage jewelry. Her own words. Condemning her completely. Linda tried to grab the phone from me, but I stepped back. "Don't worry," I told her. "I've already sent copies to Dad's lawyer. And to the bank, for their fraud investigation." She stood there, in that bedroom, surrounded by boxes and chaos, and I could see her whole world collapsing around her. "This isn't over," she said, finally. "Yes," I replied. "It is." The moving truck left, 2 hours later. Linda took her clothes, her books, and some furniture that was legitimately hers. But the jewelry, her symbol of fake status, was already being sold, piece by piece, to people who thought they were getting a good deal on costume accessories. Which, to be fair, they were. 2 weeks later, Dad got a letter from Linda's lawyer, demanding compensation for what they called stolen property. Dad's lawyer responded, with copies of the fraud evidence, the forged signatures, and a countersuit for the money she'd stolen. Linda's lawyer dropped her case immediately. A month after that, the criminal investigation concluded. Linda was charged with forgery, fraud, and identity theft. She pleaded guilty, in exchange for a reduced sentence, and agreed to pay restitution. She's serving 18 months, in minimum security prison, and she has to pay back every penny she stole. The house, Grandma's house, is still gone. But Dad used the restitution money to buy a small cabin near the lake where Grandma used to take us fishing. It's not the same, but it's something. And Linda's jewelry? Last I heard, from Margaret at Goodwill, every piece sold. Most of it went to teenage girls, who thought they were getting genuine vintage accessories for their prom dresses. I like to think Grandma would have approved. Her stolen money, eventually helping young women feel beautiful on important nights in their lives. Linda tried to contact me from prison about 6 months ago. A letter, full of apologies and explanations, asking for forgiveness. I never wrote back. Some people think I was too harsh. That the jewelry thing was petty revenge. That I should have been the bigger person. But you know what? Sometimes, being the bigger person just means being a bigger doormat. Sometimes, justice looks like costume jewelry, selling for $2 a piece, to people who will actually treasure it. So here I am, almost a year later, and I still don't regret it. Not for a single second. Dad is doing better now. He's dating again, a lovely woman named Carol, who actually worked as a nurse for 30 years before she retired. Someone who understands the value of hard work and honest living. The first time Carol came over for dinner, she insisted on cooking. And when I offered to help, she smiled and said, "Of course, honey. Many hands make light work. Many hands make light work. Not. Figure it out yourself while I scroll through Instagram." It's funny how, when you remove toxic people from your life, you suddenly remember what normal feels like. I learned something important through all of this. There's a difference between keeping the peace and enabling abuse. For 15 years. I thought I was being mature, patient, understanding. Really? I was just teaching Linda that she could treat me however she wanted, without consequences. The jewelry thing wasn't just about revenge. It was about, finally, setting a boundary. Finally saying, no more. Could I have handled it differently? Probably. Could I have been more diplomatic? Sure. But sometimes, diplomacy is just another word for letting people walk all over you. Linda made her choices. She chose to lie, to steal, to manipulate, and to hurt people who trusted her. The consequences of those choices weren't my responsibility to manage. And honestly, knowing that her fake status symbols ended up bringing joy to teenagers getting ready for prom makes me smile every single time. There's something beautifully poetic about that. These days, when I visit Dad and Carol, we actually cook together. All three of us, in the kitchen, sharing stories and laughing. The food tastes better when it's made with love, instead of resentment. And sometimes, when we're cleaning up afterwards, Carol will catch my eye and say, "Thank you for dinner, Sarah. It was delicious." Thank you. 2 words that Linda never once, in 15 years, said to me. But Carol says them every single time. That's the difference between someone who sees you as family and someone who sees you as free labor. So if you're dealing with someone like Linda, in your own life, someone who takes and never gives back, let me tell you something. You don't owe them your peace of mind. You don't owe them your mental health. You don't owe them your silence when they cross the line. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do, for everyone involved, is to stop enabling their behavior. Even if it means donating their fake jewelry to people who will actually appreciate it. If you liked this story, check out this other one on the screen. See you there.